Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Pick them up at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. DJ at ArtistFirst.com. Here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Z-Man, and I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
And go right ahead and introduce yourself. We have another person with us on the show tonight.
Yes, I am Kalen Lyons, son to both of these wonderful people, here again to describe things with my words.
With the words. Well, and funny you should mention that, because tonight's show is about the inadequacy in some ways of words.
Mm.
And it's also about reality. And we are going to keep it real.
I live in reality.
You think you do.
Well.
And here we go. But let's lead off with a quote, because it's kind of pithy, and let's let if you wouldn't mind wouldn't mind reading it, because my voice is a little thin, and then we will just launch.
All righty.
This is one of our favorites, Eckhart Tolle.
Yes, this is by Eckhart Tolle. Words reduce reality to something the human mind can grasp, which isn't very much. Tolle.
And I think he's saying with humor, which is always a good vehicle. Well, I'll throw it out to both of you, but I think he's saying with humor something which is sort of a truism, and it's also a tautology, but it's also all we have, in many ways. And one of the reasons that words matter, and that words there are so many words in so many languages and so many nuances. I think the Greeks had 3 or 4 words for love, and many languages have. English is among the most prolific, numbers and numbers of words with slightly different shades of meaning. Why? Because they're none of them none of them adequate to actually describe properly what you're trying to express. And that's just in my opinion, just a subset of the actual problem of perception, and then trying to abstract it.
Isn't there a word for that? I might be wrong in this, but isn't that like qualia, which is like your personal experience, but you can't actually communicate. No one else you can't communicate it. No one else can experience the world the exact same way you do.
Right.
So the words we use and share are sort of our best approximations.
Well, now we have to look it up, because I'm not sure what qualia is. But regardless, it is even if that's not the word, that's the true sentiment. Is that, and another way of expressing it is we all live in our own reality, our own universe that we perceive within us.
Right. Well, that's going back to the American Indian way of looking at this world. This is where we dream the common dream.
And by the way, you're right, Kay.
Yeah, your dad just looked it up.
Yeah.
But just the understanding, just in that phrase, is that your reality is your dream, or your dream time. And each person has their own unique dream time. But in order to share it, we have to come here, because this is the only place we can actually share a dream and make it common to all those that are participating. So it's an interesting concept, because it basically means that we're all building on this common dream in some way, shape, or form.
But then, I would also postulate that there is an objective reality, which is the universe, but we don't perceive the universe. Our perceptions are not reality. Reality is something which has an intrinsic imperceptibility for us. Mm-hmm. We can perceive, even grant as many senses as you want. Say it's 5, say it's 20. your 20 senses perceive 20 aspects of the universe, which has infinite aspects, which you cannot perceive. So it does, but does it matter? And I would say that also not, but it begins to matter when we try to tear our individual universal experience, which is within us, into concepts that we attempt to share through abstractions and through form or through, art, and that as a vehicle of expression is often is able to communicate, which is very difficult to express in other media. Why? Because it goes outside the bounds and it fills in the gaps that are left with words or thoughts or concepts.
I'd like to wrap back around to language, actually. Here's where I wish that I was a bit more learned about other languages and
you found quality. I'm giving you massive points for that, so keep on going now.
I've got a lot of random information in here, but to language, I wish very interesting. I know there's studies out there about how language sort of shapes the people who share it, their understandings of things. Mm-hmm. In different languages, there will be concepts that can or can't be easily expressed simply because they don't have words for it. But it's not like those things don't exist. They just aren't easily... what's the word?
Conceptualized.
Conceptualized. I was going to say vehicled.
Vehicled? Yes.
by their, native language.
Right. It depends on the language itself, because the languages all set up certain kind of pattern in the brain on how to begin to utilize communication. Just writing itself is an interesting thing because it started off as pictograms more than, in English we do letters that form words, all comes together to represent a form. But originally, it started out as a pictogram. This is what I'm talking about, and they make a shape of a cat. It's like this, meow thing.
And it's interesting because that's a visual symbol.
Right. But it's something, because you're trying to communicate one to the other a general form. And forms in general are a little bit easier to communicate than thoughts, ideas, or emotions. So it's rather interesting. It's like in the Jewish tradition, they only do the form and the consonant, and they do not do vowels, which makes the written form rather extensive when you're studying it, because you can interpret something a couple different ways.
And sometimes intentionally.
Yes. Sometimes it's written intentionally so that you can grasp the two concepts simultaneously and see the similarities and differences.
That's an interesting concept. I just want to throw it out, that intentional ambiguity, because the concept is greater than either word, if you will.
Well, and that's quite, that I also find is interesting. The idea that ambiguity in a word, actually, it's not just that it can't see the whole concept, but a word that has ambiguity in it has a very different utility than a word that describes only one or the other. It's, due to its ambiguity, is almost greater than the words that it is sort of made of, or the concepts it's able to represent.
It's not stuffed in a box. This is what this means, a very direct one-to-one. And actually, the English language is very flexible that way. I know in Chinese, it's what it is unless the pronunciation is done differently. and certain languages are like that. It's much more concrete as opposed to being ambiguous.
But to return to that, I think the interesting thing, what Kate said is extremely interesting in the sense that the sum of that word is greater than, or rather the concept the word is able to express is greater than the sum of its parts. So the ambiguity or the amorphism, if that's correct, the fact that this word is able to apply even double entendre, which I know the pun is mightier than the sword, but the double entendre of certain words, which is used throughout literature, throughout Shakespeare, intentionally to sometimes introduce a humor where there is none, because it's just the one word taken one way is just as cut and dried, whatever it is, and then taken the other way expresses a ribald or a humorous or a mocking, or so it has an extra dimension or extra dimensions from its ambiguity or from its multiple meanings, which is again it's word crafting rather than just word grabbing and putting on paper.
Yeah, something truly literal that was looking at each thing as a singular idea would miss it, potentially.
It may be our only weapon against the AI Armageddon.
Yeah.
Is that they won't understand the ambiguity.
It's true.
We'll just have to say things that we really don't mean.
Oh, yes, body puns will save us from the singularity.
Yeah, it might. It's a hope. Right now, I don't have a lot of hope left.
Oh, no, it's fine. Let the machines take over.
Oh.
Is it really?
No.
We'll find out.
We'll find out.
Oh, please.
We'll find out sooner than later. Anyway, moving on.
Right. When you were talking about God in the Jewish tradition, it reminded me, there's something, I've been reading, oh God, what was the name of the book? But I came across this interesting concept of the true name of God, like the real true name of God. Mm-hmm. Like, you have, Yahweh, which is YW... Oh, God.
WVWH.
Thank you.
YVWH.
Yes. YVWH, but that's the English translation. It's in Hebrew, it's Yud He Vav He.
Yes, Yud He Vav He, exactly. Go ahead, you were saying.
And the idea, the concept that was being explored was of all those different individual consonants permutating through all the anagrams of that, and trying to find the name of God in that. But then I believe they went deeper with it and said that, like, God was the actual, like, scripture, so then you would need to somehow permutate the entirety of the scripture and go through all that to find the actual true name of God, which is, of course, impossibly large.
Yeah. I mean, if you take every possible combination of all those letters, you're approaching, DNA levels of complexity, probably even more.
Yeah, that is true. In fact, there was a sci-fi story.
The 9,000 Names of God.
Yeah, the 9,000 Names of God.
Yeah, don't do that, because once you get them all, game over.
Yeah. Well, basically, that's the story. The monks in Tibet were apparently writing out every combination and permutation they can think of for the name of God, and that was their job. This particular monastery, this was their job. They had to do this. But then they discovered that the West had made computers. So the whole story is based on someone bringing a computer up there and setting it up so that it helps the monks. Well, of course, it does the job much, much faster. And then suddenly it reaches the end of its...
the last name.
Yeah. And the whole world disintegrates.
Right. It's like, yep, you're done.
Game over. You did it.
Game over. Exactly. Yeah. But if we walk back a little bit and get back a little bit on track, but I think this is interesting. Words, and this is what Tolle is talking about. They are, and what he says here, they are a reduction of reality. But we are too. Our words are an abstraction within us, within our thought patterns, or within our ways of expressing thought. And so, our ability to conceptualize what the isness of now, the isness of the universe, the whole thing, is a reduction of that reality. That's kind of a has to be. However, and this is what we kind of wrote in part of the introduction, is yet all those things are true. We are reducing reality. We're tearing it up. We're trying to grasp it. We're doing it imperfectly. We're trying to convey these imperfect impressions to others. That's even more imperfect, and so on, all down the line. Yet, we are vast enough as beings to contain a universe, because that's what you have within you. The universe is experienced no other place than within your consciousness field. It can't be without your consciousness field, because without it, there is no perception. So that's interesting too. Anyone?
I'm thinking. The word
in the room.
No, it's when the consciousness field. If you're thinking of it in terms of consciousness field, I'm going to go back to an analogy we had a few shows ago, where it's the idea of a hologram and the shattering of the hologram. And the shards, every shard of it contains the complete pattern of the hologram. So if consciousness that was created as this hologram, which, say, we are part of, and suddenly there is this shattering. In other words, there was something that happened where it all broke apart. And now we are experiencing the outward environment, reality, on our terms, according to the broken piece that we happen to be. We can only interpret it a certain way because we're a sliver or a square or jagged edges. Who knows?
All unique.
Yes. And since you are still part of consciousness, you experience it, but you're experiencing it through these very odd facets, let's say, or angles, or
sort of the refractive index of what your shard is.
Well, what happens with your shard, if you would?
Your shard? I mean, that also goes with the emanations thing, Ma. They were all emanations of source, but each individual emanation is like a shard, which is also cool.
Well, the ones that are capable of understanding and accepting their limitations, because that basically allows you to see the boundaries of what your particular shard happens to be. And but if it goes internal and goes right directly to the hologram that's been imprinted within, because it has the entire hologram within it, it can begin to find its place. I don't know how else to explain it. It's like the beginning of being able to put it all back together.
I would say reconnect. But I'm sorry, Kay, you were saying something too.
My thought here, the quote, the starting quote, something the human mind can grasp, human mind singular. But to my thought on it is that it's not a singular shards task to understand reality, or ability to understand reality in its fullness. It's the perception of humanity overall can get much closer to, I suppose, true reality. With many shards, you can get closer, though not there.
So the totality of experience, and amongst all shards, is getting closer. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Well, we have many languages, many concepts, many words, and more all the time. I keep on having this word bounce around my head, something that I'm pretty sure wasn't a concept in the English language earlier, though feel free to correct me. In the limited shard of perception taste, there are many accepted flavors. You know, you got savory, you've got sweet, those sorts of things, bitter. But recently one that has become much more common is the idea of umami.
Yeah.
I don't think that existed when I was a child, but it always did exist, and now we've got a word for it.
And interestingly enough, it came from another language. And English is great at stealing words from other languages and saying, that's ours now.
What's umami again?
It is the... I believe it's the taste of that you get from soy sauce or MSG, but it is a unique sensory perception in the taste category. So as Kay mentioned, I think there was 4 or 5. When we were young, they said taste is broken up into these 4 or 5 sensations, as you mentioned, sweet, sour, savory, so on, bitter. And then umami came in because people said, but what's this taste? This is none of those things. Oh. The Japanese said umami.
This has actually reminded me of another very interesting word concept idea thing that I am somewhat familiar with. There was a study done on the development of color words in language.
Right.
Yep.
Now, forgive me if I'm not perfectly accurate here, but in very, very early languages, there'll be 3 colors. You'll have light or bright, dark, and red. Red always being notable for blood.
Yeah.
And to those cultures, to those languages, there is no dark blue. There is no
no blue,
yellow. So it's not, the sun is yellow. The sun is bright, and so the sky is also bright, and
right.
The night is dark, and the water is dark,
and blood is red.
Yeah, and blood is red. And over time, certain colors, as they become more common, eventually rise to a point where people say, well, that's not really red. That's kind of a weird red we're going to call orange.
Right.
And so on and so on. It's like how there's stories of like the wine dark sea.
Right, which is a funny concept when you think about it now. You say, well, the sea's not really wine-colored. But yet that concept, or the concept of pink, didn't exist until, I think, the word we call for light red, we call it pink, but people would just give that a different name entirely, or just say it's just a red, just another type of red.
It's just a shade of red. I don't know why you'd have a word for it.
Right. There was, I think, in that study, or one that was similar, there was still to this day, there is a particular group of people, I don't know if it was Papua New Guinea or wherever it was, but a particular group of people who have no concept of the color green. Green is just another type of blue, or the other way around. Blue is just another type of green. And
I think it's blue.
Yeah, it was no concept of the word blue. The sky is just another type of green. And their world is far more green. And what they experience in this particular world is they have more words for shades of green than they do have for blue, because right. Blue is just not something that matters. So it has to do with relevance as well. Certainly, you could have said, well, maybe they couldn't see these colors, but that's doubtful, because morphology of humans hasn't really changed that much in the last million or so years. But the conceptualization of the need to differentiate, right? The need to differentiate is more important than differentiating, if you will.
I believe the same applies to the Aleuts, the Eskimos. They have like 20 different names for snow.
Yeah.
Depending upon the consistency and how it fell, whether it's icy or soft or very light or heavy, etc. There's a whole bunch of different names for the kind of snow that fell. So it's very much what they are experiencing at that point. And, if you're living up in Alaska near the North Pole, it's important to know what kind of snow you happen to be walking on.
But what underlies that is that if I needed to communicate to you, my fellow person in this environment, I need to say, well, it snowed last night, and you're saying, what do you mean snow? Snow doesn't mean it. No, it umami'd last night and with slithy toes, and what that means is something really, really specific about the conditions outside, which is really, really important. And then they say, oh yeah, I get it, and tomorrow it might, Jabberwocky or whatever. So these nonsense words, what would be a nonsense word to anyone else, or really just like a useless word, you can find in other languages. German's famous for this too, where it'll have one word which cannot be expressed in English without 3 or 4 words. You can get to the same thing or close. Schadenfreude is a good one. But when the Germans found a utility, they found a word for this. Now, German is also a poor example because they just stick a bunch of words together. They make it just longer. But sometimes not. What? Sorry?
I said that's what many words are.
Well, yeah, even in English, yes.
Yeah.
They just kind of stick them together. But I think utility is incredibly important. And in that regard, what we're really trying to do is something we just talked about in the quote, is we're trying to reduce reality or express reality as something that can be grasped, that also can be grasped as correctly as possible. So in this case, the snow is really important, that it's this exact type of snow, and for us it's just snow, heavy snow, light snow.
There's another language which has many, many, many color words. The hex codes on a computer.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
They
right.
don't hit, of course, every shade that exists. They just hit the visible spectrum in a very precise, but not infinitely precise, increments as far as, hex goes. Those are, in a sense, all color words.
Absolutely.
Humans, a limitation of humanity, we only really have so much brain space for things to remember, like of words and such. So we use it efficiently for what is important. So the snow is very important in a place where it is always snow. We need to define the difference between these different snows, and we need to define the difference between such and such things as to their importance to our lives. But to a computer, it's got a lot of brain space to work with for defining a whole bunch of things that are imperceptibly different to us.
Right.
But the difference is plain as day to the computer. It is the change of a letter A to B or 1, 2, 3.
And the interesting thing about it is at that level, at a level of computer language, a computer will very properly say that 0xAAAAF doesn't match 0xAAAAE. But from the human's point of view, that's really one imperceptible bit difference. And in the color point of view, you couldn't tell the difference. You'd say, well, that's green and the other one's green too. So it's very cool that you came up with that. But I hate to take a break here, but we do have to take a little break. So let's go back to the studio, take a little break from the words, and reduce our reality down to commercials, and then we'll come back on the other side and we'll pick up with the universe.
Batman Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
Moonstones and murder. Real murderers need a heart of stone. Meet Maggie and Mike Heartstone, parents of twin boys, entrepreneurs, and now empty nesters. Mike is retired, not by choice, from his position as chief of police in the picturesque resort town of Hamilton. And now his wife Maggie and her shop, the Cozy Crystal, are their only source of income. When a mysterious killing interrupts Hamilton's famous Springfield Park rock show, the townsfolk, the Cozy Crystal, and their lives are rocked to the core. Can Mike and Maggie figure out who is behind the murderous deeds before the town comes crashing down around them? A touch of romance, a little mayhem, and a whole lot of suspense, along with plenty of comedy and thrills galore. Get your crystal magnifying glass out. It's time for some moonstones and murder. Available on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, and other fine e-tailers in ebook and paperback. Out soon on Audible. Get your copy today.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lyons is book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side, as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Hi, this is William B. Davis, the actor who plays the Smoking Man, or did play the Smoking Man on The X-Files. I'm also a writer, director, producer, and I am delighted to tell you that you are listening to the ArtistFirst radio network.
joining us on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. This is the soul of the Everyman. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Seaman. And we are doing a very limited show tonight about the nature of reality.
Yeah.
And it's been an interesting show so far. I think, to kind of sum up the first half hour, we're really looking at human beings from the point of view of the way we conceptualize our universe, and all the many different ways that we do that. But I'd like to kind of pull back a little bit, and from the point of view of what reality is, the isness of now, the isness of reality. We human beings, we beings, operate within this reality field, and the interesting thing about it is in quantum mechanics now, or rather in the sum total of all of our knowledge, even below quantum mechanics, the current concept, the current mathematical concept of the universe is that it's just fields. And that these fields interact to create everything else, to create the quantum fluctuations, to create the actual quantum particles, and all the way up, turtles all the way up, turtles all the way down. So all these turtles. And then within this construct, there is the need for, in the quantum world, the need for an observer to collapse what is reality, the isness of now, which no one can actually conceptualize, until it is observed. And the observation in and of itself, there was a very interesting concept. I don't know if you've run into this one, but they've now basically have looked at how reality can exist inside of a black hole.
Right.
And one of the reasons that they say reality does exist, that you have quantum particles within a black hole, which is how they evaporate, is they say that the event horizon acts as an observer of the interior of the black hole.
Oh, I have heard of this.
Yes, and then they extrapolated that, and they said, well, the edge of the universe is an event horizon, and the edge of the universe is what observes the universe and creates, in essence, the universe's the idea of why time. I mean, actually, why time? Why things coalesce from one femtosecond to the next, or rather one Planck time to the next, is the observation of the event horizon of the singularity, which is still the universe, because it's still a singularity from the point of view of outside the universe, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but you have to speaking thermodynamically or quantum mechanically. Now, within ourselves, we carry an observed universe within our consciousness. We observe the whole thing. It doesn't stop at what you can touch. It doesn't stop at what you can see. It is the whole universe, which at any moment, something which is completely unperceived could affect you. A gamma ray burst from 13 billion years ago could affect you. Well, you didn't conceptualize it 13 billion years ago, but yet the perception, the thing, the isness of now will be perceived or is part of what the universe is within you. So the vastness of the consciousness is really, the edges of what we have as a consciousness, as an observer, and then amongst ourselves and how we convey these observations, how we dream the common dream, is a very, it's a very subtle concept. We are fish in the water of the universe. You have to expand your consciousness to grasp that you have to grasp that everything that you see is actually within your consciousness field. It has to be perceived. And that's a lot of stuff which you can perceive. You can perceive the whole universe given the opportunity. And that in and of itself is sort of an amazing superpower. And that's what I want to throw on the table for the next 25 minutes. So
okay.
Go.
Part of I remember something about this. There's a difference between the observable universe and the totality of the universe.
Yes.
After a certain distance, there's an edge beyond which we can't get information from, no matter how hard we try with our current understanding of, reality.
Yeah, the light cone, if you will.
And what's interesting about this is that perhaps we cannot observe that, but if the edges of reality are to be its own singularity, recording the information,
right,
the holographic projection on the edge of the event horizon, that's all that infinite universe beyond what we can perceive in the observable universe is still being observed in a sense, and that's still
not even in a sense. It is being observed in the truest sense that we can't do. Even without us observing it, it's being observed, if you will, which is kind of scary.
Interesting.
It just blows your mind when you think of it as an observation that must come about in order to bring about the universe itself. Because based on quantum theory, everything is waveform until the observer hits it, and then it becomes particle or reality. So in order for all this to be created, it's got to be observed, but it's not necessarily by us.
No.
So my question here then is, we know there are things that are within the universe that are undecided until observed, or they're collapsed once observed, right?
Right.
But if the universe, this event horizon, is an observer for all of reality, why aren't those collapsed?
It also very true. And why can you locally entangle things and locally look at things and collapse them? So there certainly is an idea of the point of or the frame of reference, but abstracted to the frame of observation. You understand Einstein's frames of reference, and that when the simplest way to say it is you're sitting in the train, I'm sitting in the train, and we can't tell which train is moving when one starts moving because our frames of reference. From your frame of reference, I look like I'm moving, and from my frame of reference, you look like you're moving, and neither one of us is wrong. Also, neither one of us is right. So the idea of locally collapsing an event from an indeterminate superimposed state, a superposition state, to a determinate state through a local observation has the flavor, in my opinion, of local frames of reference. So yes, there is an inordinate observation of the entire reality writ large on the edge of the event horizon, which is the singularity of the whole blessed mass. And then in our individual localized frames of reference from which we observe, each one of us individually, we can still and see amongst ourselves, agree upon these things, that this all happened. We can still use that localized frame of reference to collapse a portion of the reality that is still not yet observed. And it also begs the question, are we observing it unaided, or are we also part of the observer? Because we're being observed while we observe, if you know what I mean. So the next moment of now, which is the next Planck time, which gets collapsed all around us all at once, we note the little bit that we're observing too, while being observed. So the primal observer, or the abstraction of observation frames of reference, is an interesting, maybe that's like that. I haven't heard that really discussed before, so maybe I'm making new science, or just talking out my butt, one of those two. Anyway, I agree with you. It's an interesting. It's not just interesting; it's disturbing in some ways too.
Oh yeah, reality. It would be nice if things didn't. Why are observers so important? Why must you stop doing what you were doing before because I looked at you? I don't know. We've talked about this before, but it's just weird.
It's still freaky weird, but the interesting thing about it is the universe doesn't care that it's freaky weird, if you know what I mean. There's no constraint on the universe making sense to us.
Yeah, it doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to, and it doesn't. And then and the isness of the universe, when we get down under the covers and get really underneath what's happening here, and it gets weirder and weirder and freakier, and it's observers all the way down, and we say that doesn't make any sense. The universe goes, meh, I don't care. That's what it is. Deal with it. Which is wonderful, actually, because the universe is just like, it's not going to bend to our will. It requires observation, but not. We don't get to stir the pot. We just get to look at it.
Well, the concept that we've kind of skirted is the idea that your free will allows you to choose what you're observing.
True.
So, in that sense, your free will is more of a tool in shaping the reality that you happen to be interacting with, because it all depends on what you've decided to look at. You consciously choose. Now, when it's a random choice, that's usually the stuff of nightmares. But to come to a point where you are quite conscious of the fact that you have chosen to look at something, this particular field, as opposed to something else that might be trying to grab your attention. And a lot of it has to do with your own mindset on whether or not you're just in pure observation, or you want to put your own personal spin on it, or you want to go into a mindset like for the body, things are either good or bad. It's just that's a body mindset. It's good, it's bad. It's good for me, it's bad for me. That would be another lens you can look through. But what I'm saying is to be able to hold the observer mode so broadly that you can actually almost check into every aspect of your consciousness that has certain flavors. Like, it could be your body, it could be what your emotions are at this time, it could be what you happen to be thinking of at this moment. So it's the mental and emotional and your physical. And then you go into, well, what does my heart say about it? Is my soul resonating to that? And that's also different from pure consciousness. So different levels of, there's not really a word that I'm going to do my best. I guess I'd say perception, levels of perception.
Awareness?
For oneself.
Well, I like that, because if you put in the free will, but you expand it out into consciousness, and then, as you said, you can check in with your ego persona, you can check in with your emotions, you can check in with your thoughts, bring them all within the field of consciousness, so you expand yourself out. And again, now, Tole, let's go back to the isness of the moment of now requires observation, and then it requires potentially a decision and potentially an action. So all that is you operating within your local observation frame,
field,
and your awareness field, your consciousness field, your awareness field, and then being very, very precise about what parts of you or what aspects of you are being paid attention to. The ego wants to grab everything, but instead you say, well, that's nice, ego, but we're going to go talk about all these other things.
Well, you're just acknowledging that this is part of a greater whole of what you are, not to focus in on, well, whether I like it or I don't like it, not to focus in on just strictly a mental construct that you function mostly every day in. I've got to figure this out. Sometimes there's
Make a list.
No figuring it out.
I'm sorry, Kay, you were saying something.
I was going to say how it's funny you say that there isn't really like a word for it, because that wraps back around to where we started.
Yes.
Right.
The limitations of our words to describe reality. It's what's interesting with that sort of thing is that it would make it much easier to conceptualize if we had a word for it. But there's also now I need a word to describe words. There's some quality to words that make them more appealing to people. Like certain words are much better at making more people have the same conceptualization of
to better
a
vehicles.
concept. Better vehicles. And those words, when someone finally says them, begin to sort of spread through different people who hear it and think to themselves, "Oh, that's a very concise way to get the right thought into other people's heads. I will use it as well." And it's sort of it gets naturally selected for, and then suddenly that's a new word in everyone's vocabulary.
Yeah. Something that can communicate succinctly an experience, because usually that's a mix of a bit of emotion as well as concept and a viewpoint. Yes. And sometimes it comes together in a very succinct word because it's something that people have experienced, but then they can go a little bit deeper into it.
In the evolution of language, you see that. It's beautiful the way, and Kay was talking about it too, the evolution of certain aspects of color and so on. But those things become, they grow.
Yeah.
They have a life to them.
Well, I'm thinking more in terms of human beings when they're young. They have many different emotions, but they can't convey exactly what they are feeling.
Don't have the words.
Right, because they haven't learned a word, or more so, how do I express this? Because sometimes it's multiple emotions at the same time, and they get confused. It's as simple as that. So trying to almost slow that down so that they can acknowledge that I am feeling angry about this right now. And then expanding at that point, because there are levels of, you can be annoyed, you can be
perturbed,
unsettled, you can be enraged, you can be
murderous.
Yeah, there's words for even having multiple emotions at the same time.
Yes. Right.
But
right.
Honestly, my question is, could we quantify some idea that makes good words that catch for ideas, or are they inherently like things that when you hear it, then it appeals and you're like, oh, that's a good word?
Well, it's a little of both.
Normally, for that to happen, you all have to have the same kind of foundation, background, or culture. And it's like humor. Humor,
yes.
You going from one culture to another doesn't always translate.
Yeah.
So you need to have a common ground in order to begin that kind of communication. You got to start somewhere.
I love that one with I'll just relate it very quickly, but Eric, our good buddy, and when he would tell us a joke, he was German, he tells us a joke in German, and then the dog fell over, and we're going, yeah. He said, that's funny. And I said, no, it's not. But it was funny in German. So it's very true. The common humor is such a high art, but many times it requires a common framework to work, to make it actually be funny. Sometimes not. Sometimes you really get down to the lower level. You can really find like slapstick is funny for everybody because it's at a
But we all have
lower level.
bodies.
We all have bodies, amazingly.
Right. Well, that's probably one of the more common ways to communicate one to the other is to use the body experience as a foundation, like certain gestures or movements, and go through humor to communicate the humanness, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah. But humor being a very high form of communication, in the sense of its ability to pierce and its ability to convey, its ability to mock or to praise or to humor it's like poetry. Good humor is like good poetry. It's difficult to get right, but when you hit something that conveys, you get like music. It really gets in deep, and that's what. When you see people who are able to express themselves in that way, with humor or with music or with poetry or with, it's a higher form of communication. Again, it has so many different levels, so much different music in the words or music in the way you pick tones or humor can be how you say something. It can be the same exact words.
Yeah, you need to. It relates to that ancient all important concept. You need to understand the rules to break them.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
I tell you what. One rule that's coming up right now is we have hit the rule of we have come to the end of the show. So unfortunately, this part of reality is going to have to collapse back into the end of the show. So I'm Michael Lyons, and
I'm Margaret,
and I'm Kaylin.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you all for listening.